Hey, what up, Long Beach? Welcome back to the one and only place to talk Long Beach sports, where we are pumped up for some Thursday night lights this week. As always, I am co-sports editor JJ Fiddler. To my left,
co-sports editor Mike Gardabasio. We're on my back patio, soaking in some sun right now, and to my left,
Tyler Hendrickson trying to work on my man tan, and we got to thank some real men of genius over at Naples Ribco and Papalucci's for helping us bring you this podcast and everything else that we get done here at the Gazettes and the Press Telegram. Oh, we love them.
You know high school football is back, and the way you know that is that the Press Telegram and Gazette newspapers' websites are chock full of high school pigskin. Thursday night this week we have a doubleheader that are must-watch games, but you can't be at both places at the same time. So if you do go to one of these games, you got to get to the websites to watch the highlight videos, articles, and photo galleries from those games. Number one on the docket in Harbor City, it is Narbonne and Long Beach Poly. These two teams have played 5 times since 2009, Long Beach winning 4 of those, but the one loss was a pretty big one. In 2012, Narbonne handed the Jackrabbits their worst loss, 56-0, since 1916, and it was the first time Poly was shut out in 18 years. Side note, Poly went on to win the Pac-5 Division Championship in the CIF Southern Section that season. Quite a run that was. But back to Narbonne and Poly, it's always the CIF City Section taking on Pac-5 Division powerhouses that puts my ears up. And it puts the LA City Section ears up too, because these Gauchos are coming off a championship in D1 last year.
It's sort of a nouveau powerhouse, right? A Southern California team, and those City Section schools always want to measure themselves against a Pac-5 school, because their school is, Narbonne's a school where their traditional rival is more like say, San Pedro. And obviously, you want to say, okay, well, here's Poly, here's a school that's been around 100 years ago, that's turned out 70 NFL players. Where do we stack up against them? And, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of emotion involved. A lot of kids on those two teams know each other. There's been plenty of social media talk. And, truthfully, I think there's some it's really the number one game with a grudge. I think there's probably some big ego bumping between the coaches as well. Manuel Douglas at Narbonne applied for the Poly job when it was open, did some back channeling in the media to sort of put his name out there, and then it didn't end up going his way. Then back channeling sort of gets back to Poly that he's pretty upset about that, and sort of looking to prove a point maybe with a second big win over Poly in the last 4 years. But the interesting thing about it, JJ, you mentioned the City Section against Southern Section. When the game is scheduled by a City Section school, you generally know that they've got a team, because they don't want to play the Pac-5 powers in their down years. So the fact that Coach Douglas schedules this game for this year tells, I think, everybody he feels good about his chances against Poly.
I think everybody in the LA City Section thought this year was going to be Narbonne's year, and then they go and win the championship last year. They've got a lot of returning starters, like Mike mentioned, headlined by University of Arizona-bound running back Sean Riley, who gained over 2,200 yards all-purpose last year and scored 3 touchdowns as a junior.
Sean Riley. We saw how good he was against Poly previously, so we know that Narbonne's definitely talented. And this game's more important for them. And when you look at these City Section Pac-5 matchups, it's always more important for the City Section schools, because they are stepping out of their weight class a little bit. At least that's the perception, that they always want to go out and beat the Southern Section schools, especially in the highest division. And you think back to 2012, that matchup, it couldn't have gone more in favor of one team, but who ended up with the better season that year? Poly would have to say that it worked out better for them that season. Narbonne had that marquee win, and they've really been able to hang their program on that 56-0 win. Everybody thinks about that when you think about Narbonne nowadays, but they went in and they lost in the regional bowl game, and all they got out of that year was a City Section championship, which that team was so stacked. They had huge aspirations, and then Poly at the end of the day gets more out of it. So I think it's a bigger game for Narbonne just to get another one of those marquee wins. You know, Poly and maybe Narbonne should be feeling that it's more towards the postseason. So it'll be a fun game, and I definitely think it could go either way. So I'm really glad it's on a Thursday so that we can get a couple people over there.
Mike, you were in Arizona for the game against Centennial, so you're the best person to ask this question. Is this the most winnable preseason game for Long Beach Poly? Or should I say non-Moore League game?
It's certainly the most winnable remaining one. I think I would certainly chalk Narbonne at better than the Centennial team that Poly only was able to beat 13-12. You do expect Poly to have their offense have come along a little bit more since then, especially since it's been 2 weeks since that game for them, whereas Narbonne does have their first game coming up. This is their first game since the city section starts a week later than the southern section. Yeah, it's definitely the most winnable one coming out, but I think with the talent Narbonne has and the depth, that's the thing. That Arizona school, like most schools outside of Southern California, you get past that first line, there's not a lot there. Narbonne, this is a deep program that's kind of built for this year, like you said.
Can I pose a question to you guys? What do you think is the bigger advantage, having the game under your belt and having the extra week, or do you think for Narbonne being able to prepare for Poly all offseason, having been able to see Poly play already, who do you think, as far as the way the schedule sets up, has more of an advantage going into this game?
If you could stay healthy, I'd take the game experience every time. Even the small little things like getting guys in and out of special teams can win or lose you these close games. And when you do have a game under your belt, you feel so much more confident with that type of stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because I think if Poly's offense came out against Narbonne the way that they came out against the team Centennial in Arizona, I think that they would have lost that game possibly pretty handily. But now Poly's defense has the confidence to know we can stop Division I guys, because that Arizona team had 2 linemen with Division I offers. And the offense has had a chance to really look this in the eye and go, man, we've got some stuff we've got to shape up. I do think it's also, I'd lean towards that because Poly didn't play last week. So Narbonne may have had the whole summer, but Poly's had the last 2 weeks to just prepare for this game, and Poly looks a lot different offensively than they did last year. So I don't know how much good last year's film would have done Narbonne until they did play that game in Arizona.
A lot of Long Beach Poly fans might be asking themselves this week if last week Malik Henry was featured in first run reps in practice.
He's practicing with the team. The way they do things, it's not a college style to where there would be, first run, second run. He will be dressed. He will be traveling for the game. I don't think anyone's going to be able to say until Thursday whether he'll be eligible for the game or not, because they're going through his paperwork right now. If I had to bet on it, I would personally not expect to see him out there playing. From my understanding, everything's good to go except for the CIF transfer paperwork. So if that does get processed, you might even see him on Thursday.
The second game we've got circled on Thursday night is at Veterans Memorial Stadium. Our first chance to get to our favorite place in the fall this year, and it's Los Alamitos and Paramount. Los Alamitos has dominated this local matchup recently, and it looks like Los Al's ready to dominate again this year. Obviously, an unceremonious exit from the CIF playoffs last season after winning the Sunset League, but this team and 36th year head coach John Barnes are using that experience as motivation.
Well, they should be, and they still have a lot of talent coming back. They definitely lost some good seniors, Denzel Brantley, Matt Locker, guys like that. But at the same time, they've got a very experienced quarterback in Jack Talenko, and that throwing game was very, very solid last year. And so I know we've talked about expecting a big year from him, and this being their first game, Paramount obviously got their year off to a good start, battling through some injuries, but they did some good things against Wilson. You were at that game, JJ. So what are you expecting Paramount to need to do against Los Al to get the win? Because we saw Los Al a lot last year, and you did their preview, so you're really tuned into this game, right?
Yeah, I am tuned into this one. I do expect the Griffins to be as good, if not better, this year than they were last year. Talenko, like you mentioned, threw for over 2,000 yards and 19 touchdowns while completing, and this is very important, 64% of his passes. Because they swing the ball around, but if you're completing almost 65%, you're going to be pretty good, and he's got a good returning receiver in Jacob Gasser as well. Yeah, that Paramount team is very interesting. I don't think we got a good read on them from that Wilson game for first week issues, a lot of penalties, not a lot of continuity with a first-year starting quarterback in Cedric Hood there. But I think the key for Paramount is going to be on the defensive side and slowing down this Los Al passing attack. I know Los Al's worried about their defense and slowing other guys down, but goodness, they have got so much talent on offense. I see them averaging over 30 points a game this season.
Well, and they're going to be the Thursday night specials, obviously. Los Al's a team that local fans always can get a chance to see, because even if you've got Friday night plans, you could still go to Vets on Thursday. We went to some Los Al games before we were even covering them, and I expect this year to be just as entertaining as last year, but obviously Griffins fans hoping with a better run in the playoffs than they had last year.
Yeah, John Barnes brought up something very interesting when I went out there for the preview. He said, it's time for us to start preparing for games and seasons past week 10. And that's interesting, being he mentioned when they were back winning championships in the 90s, that's what they were doing. When they were practicing in the summer, they were planning on playing more than 10 games.
Well, and they ought to, because they definitely have the talent to get that done in their division. I wanted to ask another question to you guys. Does Paramount, I don't know who their second running back is if they're both healthy, whether it's Nick Hudson or Edward Vander, but does Paramount have the best second running back in the entire southern section? I mean, I'm trying to think. It's pretty talented stable over there.
I mean, if he is the second running back, and we're talking about Vander, second to Hudson had a very nice game, but Vander stole the show against Wilson. So I would counter that question with, yeah, probably, but even more so, they've got the best receiver who's not a receiver in the local section.
Well, and last year, one of the best second running backs was Cliff Sims to Sean McGrew. This year, it's just McGrew by himself in the backfield as far as the main running back, but he's got quite the quarterback there with him, as Quentin Davis impressed all of us with 7 touchdowns in the opener against La Mirada, and he's got to be licking his chops because there's another Suburban League team on the horizon who's ranked lower than La Mirada in the preseason poll, and so it's going to be a tough test for the Norwalk Lancers as they visit Bosco at Vets. So that's the next night after we covered Los Al and Paramount over at Vets, and man, that Bosco offense looked real fresh.
That final score had people saying sportsmanship, ? On the social media at us. And honestly, and Tyler can back this up because he was there, it didn't look at any point like Bosco was running that score up. No. They just scored that many points.
No, they just scored on 2 plays relentlessly. Like, it was just quick drives, and then in the second half, when you run a 70-yard touchdown, it doesn't take that long. You know what I mean? And that's just how it goes. There was certainly no... they ceased their tempo, but both teams were running up tempo. There were a lot of incompletions from La Mirada. That's what happens when you play high school sports and you have a very, very elite team against a team in a lower division that was trying to hang and obviously had their heads down once things got away from them. And sometimes it gets a little out of hand, but there was no running up of the score. I was on the sidelines. I would know.
Well, on paper, you would say that Norwalk is behind where La Mirada is. This week, St. John Bosco and Norwalk. I mean, does Bosco think about trying to not run up the score? Is that a thing you can think at this point in the season?
I mean, I really don't think so, especially not, you mentioned that Coach Barnes at Los Al wants to think about games after Week 10. Well, Jason Negro at Bosco has been thinking about games after Week 10 for the last 3 or 4 years, and you can't. I mean, if you're Bosco, what you have to figure out is what can we do to win a CIF Southern Section of State Championship, and truthfully, I don't think we're talking about bad sportsmanship. I think we're talking about both teams signed a contract to play this game. In the case of La Mirada really wanted to play this game. I assume Norwalk also obviously wanted to play the game, or they wouldn't have signed a 2-year deal. So, to me, no. It's just about you just have to prepare for the game and try and play as well as you can. And if you end up beating a team by 80 points, then, what... that means you did bad? You know what I mean? It's just sort of tough for me sometimes to wrap my head around that. As long as you're not spiking the ball up 80, right, with like 3 minutes left, trying to run a 2-minute drill. But if you're just
throwing
scoring,
the ball on first down, I'm looking at you, Steve Spurrier.
But it's just, if you're just scoring, you're just scoring, right? I mean, that's what you're out there to do. Even if you have your backups out there, you want your backup running back to get used to falling down after 5 yards or something?
Never.
I mean, Tyler, did Mike Machete or the La Mirada coaching staff express any feelings of bad sportsmanship after the game?
I didn't get any of that from them, and it was obviously the running clock helps, but Bosco was doing a lot of running the ball and, just maybe on third down, occasional short passes and stuff, but obviously they had their backups in pretty early in the second half. But, you got to go out and play the games with intent. You don't want to just go out there and do both teams a disservice by just going 50% and playing half speed and not taking the game seriously is a lot of times how people get hurt. And so, like you said, the games were scheduled. Everyone's the same age out there. They're going to go out there and do it. And, let's see if Norwalk can do a better job of holding on to the ball and running some clock. I know that's what they did when they met last year. They had a really long drive that took up almost an entire quarter. Obviously, it was still a lopsided result. But let's see what new head coach Otis Harrison has in mind for his team. They know the challenge that they're up against, obviously. But I don't expect either team to lay off the gas pedal, at least through the first half and maybe halfway through the third quarter as well. But that's how teams get better. They go up against elite competition and they get and give their best shot.
Of course, that's just one game on Friday night. Another marquee matchup at Downey, 7:30 p.m. The Vikings are hosting Hart, another game in a murderer's row of a non-league schedule for Downey.
Downey does have a tough schedule, but they do have 4 home games to start the season. They beat Pedro last week, and then they're going to host Alamany and Milliken. So all difficult games, against higher division teams, but winnable games. I love the way Jack Williams has scheduled this season.
Yari Bowdit at Bellflower High School, Gar in Mayfair, a nice suburban San Gabriel Valley League matchup there. I think that one's going to be entertaining. I'm excited to see these two offenses go at it.
Valley Christian Cerritos, as the Crusaders of Valley Christian try and improve. They had the second biggest win last week of any of our teams. They beat Laguna Beach 50-0. They'll be taking on Cerritos at Gar Friday at 7.
Dominguez is at Jordan. The Dons trying to build on their impressive performance against Orange Lutheran. They lost, but it was only a 21-13 result, and the Panthers trying to bounce back there up in the north side.
Milliken hosting Aliso Niguel. Milliken, the only Moore League team besides Poly with a win so far, trying to improve to 2-0.
At Clark Field, the St. Anthony Saints are going to start their season against Vasquez, the team they beat in the quarterfinal last year on their way to the semis. Friday at 5 p.m., Compton is hosting Compton Centennial in the first game officially back for Calvin Bryant for the Tar Babes.
And Cabrillo continuing their murderer's row of non-league games. A week after playing at J. Sarah, they've got to make the trip to St. Bonaventure for a tough game.
Fountain Valley is going to be visiting Wilson, where the Bruins are trying to get right after their loss at Paramount on the opening week. Artesia is going to travel to take on Magnolia at Western High School, while Glenn is at Pioneer.
We mentioned La Mirada earlier. They're looking to bounce back at Charter Oak, and so they're going to want to show some improvement after the Bosco game. That game's at 7.
Two more local games at 7. Linwood is hosting Hawthorne, and Warren is hosting St. Paul.
And Discovery High is going to set sail in search of the Newfoundland, JJ, hoping to land at Avalon to play the Lancers, a 8-man football power who are playing their first game on Friday.
On Saturday at 1 p.m., Calvary Chapel is at Faith Baptist, and then a 7 p.m. game, Bellflower against Pacifica at Bolsa Grande.
For the live score updates from all of those games, make sure you are following us on Twitter at PT Gazette Sports. I am going to break sports radio and podcast rules right now and tell you to pause this and go watch the official trailer for the movie Concussion, coming out in December, starring Will Smith. As you might guess, it's about football, but really it's about concussions, CTE, and Dr. Bennett Omalu, who discovered all of this and then went through the interesting experience of fighting the law. And the law is winning, the law being the NFL. And I gotta say, before we talk about this and get everybody's opinion, I'm more interested to see what my opinion is after watching this than listening to the chatter on social media and finding out, quote unquote, the world's opinion. Because I know how people are going to react to this. I'm still not sure how I'm reacting to it. I'm still not sure how CTC affects the way I watch football, something I've done my entire life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the movie's going to change any of my thoughts on that. I've read a lot on the subject. I think Junior Seau's suicide will always be more impactful to me than a sort of the fictionalized version of the science behind what's going on. Yeah, I mean, I think America's view on this stuff is changing, as it should. If you talk to parents of young kids, they want to see their kids playing football in a different way. I mean, they want to see the head taken out of it, and they want to see safety first. And truthfully, I think what I hope this movie really shows everyone is people always would have felt like that. The NFL just lied their way to keeping people from understanding what was happening for another few years. So this movie, I think, is kind of going to be the world crashing down on the NFL a little bit, and I'm kind of happy for that, to be honest. I love the sport of football, but I think the NFL is proven itself to be a pretty disgusting organization over the last couple of years.
Yeah, for too long it's been swept under the rug, and so I think if this movie can bring certain things to light even more and make it more mainstream, I think that's good. And obviously Will Smith's in it, so it's going to be a good movie. So I'm also excited to watch it and see how it makes me feel about football, because I'm sort of going through that conflict as a lot of sports fans that I know are going through right now. But it's not just a football issue. I mean, we see concussions in a lot of different sports. I mean, just look at women's soccer. I mean, there's so much, we've seen careers shortened because of that, and there's a lot of other areas in which concussions have become a problem. It's just more mainstream when it relates to the NFL and to football. So it has to go beyond this. It's not just an NFL issue.
Can we talk about the movie for a second? That's Pursuit of Happiness, Will Smith, and it's so good to see him back, dude. Tell the truth.
I'm very excited for the movie, and I to Tyler's point, I thought it was interesting that they titled it Concussion, not like the NFL is lying to you or football is a dark secret or something, but Concussion, because really what this guy discovered is this common medical term actually has all these bigger implications for soccer players, hockey players, basketball players, for everybody really. And as people who cover young people playing sports, we've covered kids who had seizures on the court as a result of concussions, right? I mean, I think it's really important that people understand what's happening with this science so that more informed and better decisions in terms of safety can be made.
I gotta say, I love Pursuit of Happiness Will Smith. He is not my favorite Will Smith, but I don't think Fresh Prince Will Smith makes a lot of sense in this particular movie.
Neither does Independence Day Will Smith. Just smoking a cigar while walking into the OR. Yeah, no, that doesn't work. I got another question. Why is Heinz Field just take it on the chin every time somebody needs a football stadium in a movie? I mean, Bane blows it up. I think they showed Heinz Field like 3 times in this trailer.
Because it looks like a football stadium. You can't go to Levi's Stadium right now because it looks like a shopping mall. It looks like a football stadium.
And that's from a Niners fan.
I got a different theory. They got all that steel there. It's easy to rebuild it.
That's it. That's all. There ain't no more. Another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk in the books. Like we said, Thursday night games, Friday night games. Long Beach State is on the road this week, but they're coming back next week. You can find coverage of everything Long Beach sports at the Press-Telegram and the Gazette newspapers, GazetteSports.com. Thank you to everyone at the PT and the Gazettes who help us put out this content and, obviously, this show each and every week. For Mike, for Tyler, for JJ, we'll see you in the stands this weekend, y'all. Take care.
So close.
I thought he had it.
So close.
Regression.